here we are unpacking yet another trait, talking about servanthood today. And I'm really excited. I feel God is just on this word. We're going to be in the book of Matthew, so you can go to your Bibles to Matthew, first book of the New Testament, the first gospel. Each gospel has a bit of a different emphasis and a bit of a different structure. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, different accounts of the life of Jesus written by these different authors. So I want to tell you a little bit about Matthew as we open up to Matthew chapter 20. So Matthew's gospel emphasizes that Jesus is the long-awaited Jewish Messiah and King who fulfills God's promises in the Old Testament. What Matthew is showing us is that Jesus is in fact the King. He's the long-awaited King, and he's come to fulfill all the messianic prophecies. Matthew tells us that Jesus is not just a wise teacher, but is the one who God has chosen to usher in the kingdom of heaven. And it's broken up into 5 different sections. Matthew is broken up into 5 sections. And where we'll be today in Matthew chapter 20, it's kind of smack dab in the middle of the section that is Jesus' teachings on humility and forgiveness. So Jesus is giving a series of lessons here on discipleship, on what it means to follow him and what that looks like. And so we're here in the teachings on humility and forgiveness. And Jesus and his 12 disciples, they're headed to Jerusalem. And what happens right before the reading today is that in verses 17, 18, and 19, Jesus predicts his death for a third time. Now, he's referenced it to them. He's told them that this is going to happen, but this is the first time he explicitly states exactly what is going to happen to him. He tells them, I'm going to be mocked, scourged, beaten, crucified, and then resurrected. And it's the most just outright detail he's given on what is going to happen to him. And then right after that, like that's a moment, right? If a friend shows up and is like, hey, I'm going to be, someone you love, I'm going to be mocked, scourged, beaten, died, and resurrected. You'd kind of need a minute, right, to respond. You think that would elicit a different response than it does in what we're going to read. And so that's kind of the context I want to paint as we look at Matthew 20. And so he just tells them that. They're on their way to Jerusalem, Jesus and the 12. He just says, this is what's going to happen to me. And then this is the interaction he has with his disciples. Then verse 20, Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want, he asked. She said, grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the 2 brothers. So James and John are coming, and they kind of go around everybody in a sneaky way, and they're trying to ask Jesus, could we have the favored positions at your right and left? So the 10 get mad at the 2 brothers. So Jesus calls them all together, and he gives them this lesson. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. One of the challenges that we face as disciples of Jesus is that he is asking us to live in another reality than the one that we have in the natural. So Matthew's coming and he's showing that Jesus came with a different kingdom. The king has come operating in a different kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. And his teachings were so radical and so countercultural to the systems of man as he was confronting them and challenging them. And they still are that way today. Jesus' teachings and his lessons are countercultural to our reality. The New Bible Commentary says it like this. It says, the kingdom of heaven creates an alternative society which challenges conventional values. It's this concept I'm talking about. We are living, as disciples of Jesus, we are invited to live in an alternative society that challenges conventional values. So that is a bit of, that's a challenge. That's a bit of a difficulty for us, right? Because there's this reality, this material one that we're living in. There's the reality that non-believers live in, but we're called to an alternative society which challenges conventional values. And we see it pop up all the time as Jesus is walking with his disciples here. He's calling them to live in another world with a different set of values. In John, he says it outright. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." It doesn't look like this world. It doesn't act like this world. It doesn't smell like this world. It doesn't resemble this world. My kingdom that I'm coming to establish and invite you into is different. It is other. And he came and it was just so opposite, right? He says, if you want to live, die. If you want to gain your life, lose it. If you want to receive, you should give. If you have enemies, you should bless them. If you want to be first, you got to be last. He just came and he's flipping every conventional value on its head as he walks out this alternative society that the kingdom of heaven is. The kingdom of God is upside down. And so here we see it here. Now Jesus has come as king, and the disciples understand this. They've had the revelation of who he is. Now they have a framework for a king. Secular kings set up their world to be served, right? Secular kings are served at every turn. They have servants, they have slaves, they're waited upon. They have a cupbearer. A cupbearer's job is to taste the wine before the king drinks it in case it's poisoned. Kind of makes you wonder what kind of king that was, right? You're like, I could use that at work. So the disciples understand if you're great and if you're a king, clearly you would be served. And we want to be at the king's right and left because those are the best places to be. If we're not going to be king ourselves, we want to be at his right and left hand. And Jesus just looks at them and he's like, oh, that is not how greatness works. That's not how my kingdom works. James and John are here, and what they're trying to do, they're not being sweet, okay? Like, let's not mince words here. They are trying to pull some rank. They're trying to secure prominence here. It's their ambition and the human nature-driven value system of man showing up saying, you want to be at the top. You want to be at the king's right and left. And Jesus responds with a teaching on a new standard. He responds to their vying for position with a lesson on humility and servanthood. And it's just so other that they don't get it. This argument, who is the greatest, is the most argued about thing with the disciples that's recorded. And if it's recorded the most, you can only imagine how much it really is breaking out among them. Guys, they argue about this at the Last Supper. Can you imagine? In hindsight, were they like, that's what we were talking about? Our last meal with Jesus, we were arguing over who was greatest. That's embarrassing. Some of you would be embarrassed by that. Others of you would be proud. I would probably be proud. I'd be like, that's right. That's exactly what I wanted to know before he left. They just don't get it, right? Because the world defines greatness as being served. And here's what we have to first recognize before we go further in this teaching. We have to be honest about this thing right here, guys. We want to be great. Human nature. If greatness is defined as being served and we want to be great, to some extent, every single one of us, to some degree, wants to be served. Just human nature. We love to pull rank. We love seniority. We love promotion. We love when something is no longer our job. Amen. Hallelujah. When I worked at Starbucks and got promoted a bit, I was like, that's no longer my job. That's for the rookie. That's for the person who's in that position. That is below my pay grade. Like, yes, Lord, thank you, Jesus, in all humility, of course. We love when we grow out of something and it's now someone else's job. And it's just this, we see our human nature show up. We're James and John. They're like, who's the greatest? Guys, they send their mom. That's rich. This story is recorded elsewhere, but I picked this one because I'm like, that's hilarious. They send their mom? Like, when you get your mom as a little kid, an argument breaks out with your siblings, and you got to get mom. It's serious business. I know, when my kids are calling for mom, I'm like, oh, this is a big one, right? So it's like, you pull in the big guns. You pull mom in. When you're a teenager, It's a little ridiculous to pull mom in, right? I remember being a teenager with my siblings and the argument escalates and it's like, we cannot resolve this, but don't say you're gonna call mom. Like, don't, you're trying to resist. Don't call mom. You got this. Don't be a baby. You don't wanna call mom. And whoever said I'm calling mom, now it's just like, you're gonna get teased so much more and it's gonna be worse, right? As a teenager, it's a little ridiculous to call mom. So as a kid, it's serious business. Like, that's acceptable. Come on now, you're 5 years old, you need mom. As a teenager, a little ridiculous, it's a little embarrassing. As a grown man, if you're a grown up, getting your mom to help you in conflicts. Let me just give you some dating advice. Single ladies, if he's still getting his mom, I have one word for you: run. Don't wait. Run. If he's like, I need my mom. So this is what we see here. They bring their mom, and they actually are trying to supplant poor old Peter. Peter, James, and John are kind of this little trifecta, Jesus' inner circle. They're present at this major moment in Jesus' life, the transfiguration. They get to be a part of it, and they're kind of in the inner circle. And James and John try to cut Peter out. They're like, Mom, will you go ask Jesus for us if we could be the that is right and left? And what if Mom was like, well, what about Peter? Don't we love Peter? Like, Peter's your buddy and he's your best friend. You guys have been through it. No, don't tell Peter, right? What do we see? The human desire for greatness is so powerful, it will cause you to betray people. The human desire to be great is so powerful, it will cause you, as a grown-up, to get your mom and try to help out with this. This is what we see showing up. And to the disciples, being great was being served. This is the framework that they have. And surprise, that just hasn't changed, has it? We're still showing up wanting to be served. You might not want to be at the top of the food chain. I'll give you that. There's some personalities that are like, I don't want to be at the top. I'm not, There's a personality profile I took, and describing me, the first sentence of describing Becky's personality was, you walk into a room and look for who's in charge. And I thought, I'm offended. And Derek goes, no, that's true. He's like, you really love to know who's the boss. I'm like, why do you think that is? He goes, because if no one is, you are going to be. I'm like, definitely. So maybe you don't want to be at the top of the food chain, but come on, no one wants to be at the bottom. You might not want to be top dog, but no one wants to be bottom dog, right? Yeah. Why? Because being served is awesome. This is why we have restaurants. For 90 minutes, I'm royalty. For 90 minutes, I almost have my own cupbearer. For 90 minutes, right? I am served. I am waited upon. I am attended to. Fork's dirty. New one, please. Food's 2 degrees off. Some of you send food back that nothing's wrong with it. You just like bossing people around. I'm just kidding. We love to be served. It feels so good. I went to the Lux Theater for the first time not that long ago. My husband, no one loves going out to eat more than my husband. No one loves to be served. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. And he was talking about, and he loves the movies. And he goes, oh my gosh, the greatest thing has ever been created. There is a movie theater experience with dinner. You got to go to the Lux. It's called the Lux Theater. And I'm like, this sounds like the demise of humanity. I don't know. Like, really, that's a lot. I don't know. He's like, you got to come. So I went to the Lux Theater. I'm in a recliner. I'm in a high chair. They put a table in front of me. I'm reclining. How you guys have, maybe this is just my type A personality. I had never felt so lazy. I'm laying down. They push a table to me and they're like, here's a button. I'm like, what's the button do? We serve you. Bing, fries. Bing, refill. Bing, steak. Bing, popcorn. And they're fumbling in the dark. The poor people, they're like, this setup is this, we're not meant to be served dinner in a dark movie theater. And I'm just pressing a red button and I'm just seeing what else they'll bring me. And Derek's like, this is what I was created for. I am King Derek. And, his name actually means gifted ruler. I know. And he's like, this is exactly why my mother named me this. And he's pressing my button. He's like, you need more things. I'm like, I'm like, Derek, I feel like Wall-E. Have you ever seen Wall-E? I hate the movie Wall-E. It scares me. In Wall-E, they've destroyed the earth with garbage, and they've shot themselves up into space, and they live on hoverboards attached to screens, and they eat, their muscles and bones have atrophied, and they just hover around, eating and on iPads. It's the Lux Theater that is the beginning of our society becoming the society in Wall-E. And I can't even enjoy myself. I'm so like, Derek, we should stretch. Like, should we work out in between? How long until we atrophy? And like, this much service is not good for us. And he's like, it takes you a minute, you'll get used to it, as he's eating fries, We love service. We love good service. We want good service. America wants good service. And we pride ourselves on the havoc we will wreak on people who give us poor customer service. I will never attend your business again. I will never fly this airline again. I will never shop here again. Why? It is bad service. We show up to the world, to businesses, to work, to our families, to church, saying, who or what is here to attend to me? Because it's just human nature. But the challenge here is that we are called to follow a king who showed up with a bowl and a towel and got on his knees. Our human nature says, I want to be great. It means I'm up here, but we're called to follow a king who said greatness is down here. And he got on his knees with a bowl and a towel and he washed feet. In a world where greatness is defined as being served, Jesus said, I have a new standard. Greatness is being a servant. And the disciples are just wrestling with this. They keep vying for position. They keep saying, who's the greatest? And Jesus is giving them something so countercultural. It's repeated. He's like, greatness is service. Greatness first is last. Living is dying. Giving is, receiving is giving. And he keeps with this countercultural message, and they just don't quite understand it because it is so other from what they know and for how we're wired as humans, right? You guys ever have an experience where someone says something to you that you just can't comprehend because it's so outside of your MO, like it's so outside of your wiring? I am a type of person, like, what do I care about and have an opinion on? I don't know, everything. So the other day, this really happened. I was bothered by something, and Derek goes, well, you could just not care. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. What? I think he saw me short circuit. I kind of blipped and I was like, wait, I'm sorry. I thought you just said I could not care. What did you say? Can you repeat yourself? You could just not care. I don't understand. This is the disciples and Jesus. Who's the greatest? He who is your servant. Sorry. Jesus, you're crazy. You're hilarious. Jesus always with the sarcasm. Seriously though, like, who is the first? He who is last. Oh, let's ask him again later. He seems off his rocker. He's about to fall asleep. He's delusional. And they keep asking him, what do you mean? 4 words he gives them, guys, turns an entire society on its head. 4 words, he turns an entire standard. He flips it upside down. In verse 25 and 26, he says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Verse 26, he turns to them, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great must be your servant. So he just paints this contrast immediately. Not so with you. The world defines greatness as authority and ruling over people and exercising that authority and putting people in their place and being at the top and being promoted and having recognition. The world defines greatness that way, but not so with you. In my kingdom, in this alternative society that is the key to eternal life, you will be a servant to be great. We don't like that. They didn't like that answer, and we don't like that answer. That's why it's quiet. In our pursuit of greatness, Jesus responds with servanthood. This is what his response is to entitlement. When we get entitled, God's like, awesome. Just a dash of this, a little bit of that. What are you making, God? Humble pie. Oh, is it for my spouse? They need it. God's like, open wide. I'm just saying, you can guarantee when you start operating out of entitlement, a lesson on humility is right at your heels. Because he opposes the proud. God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Is it God's desire to oppose you? No, he doesn't want to. He wants to grace you, so he has to get you walking in humility. This is his response when we get entitled, when we start to think, well, what about me? He responds with, this is serving. You know, it's just so crazy when you think about it. Like, this is why it's a struggle. How is greatness serving? Serving is the worst. If you've ever been, how many of you have been a server at a restaurant? Easily, some of you need to go get that job for a week. Easily, the worst job I ever had was being a server. I was a server at this dirty hole-in-the-wall restaurant in the Midwest called Schnick's. I didn't slur there, that's the name of it, Schnick's. And it was not glamorous. Because you know what I realized as a server? I'm blamed for everything that's not my fault. Food's too cold, food's too hot, food's not good, food's too salty, food's wrong. I'm like, I didn't make the food. It's cold in here, it's hot in here. This, you know, it's just everything is your fault. And as a server, you understand, I show up and what do you know as a server? This experience is not about me. I'm not setting people down going, okay, now, here's what I'm gonna need from you. Right? This is about my needs. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I'm in a hurry. The entire experience as a server is about waiting upon others and attending to their needs. Serving, this is the picture. And this is the definition Jesus gives for greatness. Well, what does it mean, serving? Like, what's the Greek breakdown, right? Oh, it means serving. I looked, I'm like, there's gotta be some cool Bible code I'm gonna hack here. And I'm gonna blow their minds. What does it mean, Jesus? Logos, you know, logging on. Serve, to attend and wait upon others. Yeah, I was afraid so. This is what it is. Jesus goes, what is it? What greatness? How do we be great? We all wanna be great. Jesus is like, awesome. We don't know what we're asking when we ask God to make us great. Jesus says it. Mom comes, she's like, oh, can my boys be at your right and left? They just want to be, we want in your kingdom. Great King Jesus, can you favor my boys? They want to be great too. And I'm their mom and they deserve to be great. And Peter Schmieder, it's James and John, right? And Jesus goes, you don't know what you're asking. And he says, can you drink the cup? He actually doesn't address the mother. He goes right to James and John. He goes, can you drink the cup? Yes, of course we can drink the cup. Absolutely. What is it? Wine, red, white? We don't care. Yes, we'll drink the cup. The cup was suffering. The cup was suffering, and he says in another account, he says, can you drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I will be baptized with? It's suffering and judgment and the crucifixion he's talking about. You want to be great? You don't know what you're asking. Yes, we do. Make us great. Okay, here, hold the cross. I don't know that we'd ask Jesus to make us great and promote us and bless us and enrich us if we had a true definition of what he saw as greatness. We just love this message that's like, God's like, I just want to bless you and give you everything you want and fulfill all your dreams, and I'm just a desperate lover boyfriend for you. Oh my gosh, come here, you're the greatest thing I ever made, and whatever you want. That's the message we like. Yes, God loves us. He's desperate for us. He's jealous for us. He's relentless in his pursuit. But he's not like, I'm going to grant you all the desires of your ego. I'm going to grant you all the desires of your flesh. I'm going to grant you all the desires of your selfishness. God giving us the desires of our heart is under the condition that our heart has been made new and transformed by the grace of the Holy Spirit, and our desires have changed. And now, as a disciple of Jesus, my desire is that others would be promoted. My desire is that others would be blessed. My desire is that my enemies would prosper. My desire is that I would lay my life down. Would we continue asking Jesus and crying out for greatness if we knew what we were asking? Because he was a king who got on his knees with a bowl and a towel and washed feet. We're called to a different standard of greatness. Following Jesus means I embrace this. We're talking about discipleship. Like it's just, we can't, there's no way to cut it. I'm like, is there any other way? Like what, we sat, what does a disciple look like? Well, we got to look at, what did Jesus look like? And there's no doubt about it. Jesus says, I came to die. So what does that mean for me? You die. I came to be a servant. Awesome. But what about me? You came to serve me, right, Jesus? You're the best. Thank you. He's like, no. Now you be like me. If you're my disciple, you live as a servant. And that's just difficult for several reasons. It's difficult because it's countercultural. So countercultural to show up as a servant because we're in a consumer-driven society. So when you show up as a servant to a consumer-driven society, you stand out. But guess what? That's the goal. Our lives as disciples of Jesus, if we're disciples of the most radical leader to ever have walked the earth, then our lives should be radically standing out. Why do you look so different? I'm following a different leader. Why do you look so radical? Following a radical teacher. Why are you so countercultural? My master is countercultural. The same way that it stood out and was so unthinkable for a king to get on his knees and wash feet and take the role of the actual servant. It was the servant in the household of a wealthy person that would wash the nasty, dust-filled, warty, toenailed feet of people walking in. And Jesus took that position as king, modeling, this is true greatness. This is what you're called to. He says, do this. That the same way that stood out, our lives living as servants everywhere we go in society should stand out. But I think sometimes we don't stand out. Serving's difficult because it requires ego death. I'm on this thing with ego death right now. Oh my gosh. It's crazy when you really look at what we're driven by in culture, and it's ego. Here's your ego. You have an ego. You're not bad that you have an ego. Paul would call ego the flesh, right? Paul wasn't like, get rid of the flesh. You shouldn't have the flesh. What's wrong with you that you have the flesh? He says, no, subject it, crucify it, die to it. Don't follow it. So your ego is there. It just is. It's there. But it is your job to kill it. True Christianity, honestly, is full ego death. And your ego doesn't want to die. Your ego's job is to remain important. Your ego's job is to feel like it's winning. So you have this ego that's vying for position. James and John, their ego is popping up. We think ego just means you're arrogant, but ego is just the human condition we all have. And it wants to be great. And it's our job following Jesus to go, what did he do with his ego? If Jesus was trying to cling to a position, he never would have gone to the cross. Your ego says someone else should do that. Your ego says it's not your job to wipe the counters in the bathroom. Doesn't somebody pay for that? Isn't that someone's job at the church? Why would I do that? Your ego says don't stop for that piece of trash. Your ego says don't look for the benefit of others. Your ego says make sure you get your portion first. Your ego says you've grown out of that. Your ego says it's not in your job description. Your ego shows up and says, what's in it for me? But Jesus invites us to another way. Jesus says we are going to kill that thing. We are going to subject our ego to my lordship and follow my example. And everywhere Jesus showed up, he's saying, what can I give? Everywhere Jesus showed up, he's never pulling rank. He's never like, I'm the king. Gather around me. Everywhere Jesus showed up, what do you need? How can I give? How could I serve? How could I help you? He's never asking what's in this for me. Your ego doesn't want you to be last. But if we're not willing to get on our knees with a bowl and a towel, perhaps we aren't following Jesus to the level we think we are. So this is what he modeled for us. Every time he showed up and he touched the leper, Nobody touched a leper. You don't even look at the leper. It was like Harry Potter, don't say the name. Don't say leper, like just the very thought of it made you feel filthy. And Jesus stopped for them and ministered to them and included them. He called the tax collector to follow him, the most hated people in society, the ones that nobody wanted to be around. He called destiny out. He stopped for the woman caught in adultery. He touched the demon-possessed outcast. He washed his disciples' feet. Everywhere Jesus went, he was modeling true greatness. Do we? Do we love the outcasts? Do we stop for the unlovable? Do we recognize the unrecognized? Do we wash feet? It all requires security. We have to be secure. I will never serve if I'm insecure. Jesus shows security. I love what he says. He just boldly proclaims. He says, I came to serve, not be served. He's right there in full confidence and security of his mission. This is actually what I came for. We got to get that. We got to get that level of secure. I came for this, not that. I came to serve, not be served. I came to seek the benefit of others, not myself. I came to lay my life down, not cling to it. I came to give up my position, not claim what I'm rightly owed. But we have to go in security. Because if I'm insecure, I won't wash feet. I might get on my knees and do it out of duty. But if I'm doing it out of insecurity, I'll be looking over my shoulder wondering when my feet are going to get washed. I'll be going, well, I'll do it for 10 minutes. I'll do it for 5 people. I'll do it for a little bit. I'll do it until I grow out of it. I'll do it until someone else comes along with less rank than me. But when we can get secure in our identity as disciples, when we can get secure at who we are in following Jesus, then we can show up to every situation, a humble servant, and people will go, well, why are you doing that? You don't have to do that. Someone else can do that. I came for this. I came to serve, not be served. Why? Because my king did. It's inconvenient. It's so inconvenient serving because it's all about others. It means I go out of my way to wait upon others everywhere, not just at church, but I do it at work. I do it in my family, in my marriage, in my parenting, with my friends. I show up ready to serve everywhere I go. Well, Becky, that sounds like it's going to be tiring. Sheesh, how long you got to do that for? Where's the self-care Sunday? I don't know, where was Jesus's? He wasn't like, I'm really tired of this. I keep showing up and giving myself out. What do they have to offer me? He looked at us who could offer him nothing. All that I have. That song, I have nothing fit for a king. And he showed up and said, I will pour myself out for you. This isn't about me. And what's important is he modeled it, and then he didn't leave saying, do a lot of what I did, unless it's uncomfortable. Do everything I did, but unless it's inconvenient. He didn't go, do like this and this and this, but the stuff that would like really stretch you and make you uncomfortable, don't worry about it. He says, live like I did. Do what I did. I've set the example. I've modeled what it is to be great. It's inconvenient. It's inconvenient to serve in kids ministry. They can't even amen that point because they're over there in the kids ministry. But when I show up as a servant to my church, I could say in confidence and security, I came for this. I don't go, I don't know if it works in my schedule. I don't really feel called to it. Well, I did that a lot in my old church and I didn't feel super appreciated. I came for this. This is how we approach. This is crazy. Guys, you know the church at large has to cone off parking spaces for new families and the elderly because we so show up as consumers that we won't be inconvenienced and park farther away without being told to. Do you think I have a problem with that? I am convicted in that. I have to tell myself, park farther away. I challenge myself today. I'm like, I parked far away, but still kind of like, what's the closest I can park and still park far away? And the Lord was like, don't you get up on that stage and challenge them. Like, you get your butt 2 more rows down. Like, it's hot. Honestly, because you can drive into the parking lot and posture yourself. I'm here to serve. I'm going to start serving right now. Before I get a host badge, before I go through elements, I'm going to serve the unbeliever, the newcomer to church, the elderly person. I don't need that front row parking space. I can park farther out. I don't need it to be coned off. We don't naturally show up with a posture of servanthood. But can you imagine a church that did? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what our lives would look like, what our marriages would look like if we showed up? Covenant is, I'm in this for what I give. What would our marriages look like if it was two people? The response to that, every time we do premarital counseling, we're like, hey guys, this covenant is about what you can give, not what you get. And sure enough, the more broken one will be like, well, what about, how does that work? If I'm always attending to their needs, what about my needs? Right. Well, what if they don't? Choose wisely. You want to rethink this? We'll meet in 2 weeks. Worship team can come on up. Why would we do this? Well, if it's not enough to provoke us that our King did it and he modeled it, then we could rest in this. Serving, us showing up as servants, will change the world and it will change us. It's kind of God, right? That he builds just benefits into everything that he asks us to do. Doesn't have to, but he does. And life becomes it's so much richer when I show up as a servant. My marriage, I'm telling you, is so much better. When I lose sight of my role as a servant, I am a strong woman. I do not like that verse on submission. But I can't get away from the fact that I'm called to serve my husband. And he's called to serve me. When I lose sight of that, this gets really difficult. It gets ugly. It builds resentment. When I lose sight of my role as a servant in the world, I get tired. You know why? Because they don't have anything to offer me, right? Youth pastoring. I was youth pastor for almost 8 years here. My job as a youth pastor was to serve the next generation and to serve the families of this church. Those teenagers had nothing to offer me. In fact, they took from me. They made me poorer. They took my gas in my car. They took my food when they came over. They just took from me. They didn't have anything to offer me. But when I would approach that role as this is for me to gain something, experience, ministry credit, preaching reps, leadership skill. When I approach that role going, what is in this for me? And I'm the youth pastor and I'm here to gain something. They were the most miserable seasons of youth pastoring because it was never enough. It was never getting me what I wanted because it was backwards. It was a perversion of what I was there for, right? And I'm telling you, here I am. I'm Jesus Culture's first youth pastor, a global movement birthed from a youth group, and I'm the first youth pastor. I felt like the eyes of the nation were on what our church was going to do, specifically, who's the next Kim Walker and Chris Kilala and the next Banning Liebscher? What's this youth group going to do to the earth? How are the conferences going to be like? And I got 40 high schoolers meeting in a public library, trying to get them excited about revival in the same place they take their final. Momentum is less than evident. And I feel like I am failing. And I was driving home one day and I'm thinking, I was there for the recognition of it. I was there for what it was going to do for me. And, I'm called to ministry and this is my starting point and okay, and what's this going to do for me? And they're just, these teenagers giving me nothing. I want to talk about security. Work with young people. They're just so they have no flattery. They're like, is that what you're wearing? I'm like, no, it's not what I'm wearing. I'm joking. This is a costume. What is that? Is this what I'm wearing? Why? What would you wear? So brutal. Ouch. Driving home one night from youth, and we got 40 students. I got 2 kids at the time. We're living in a small house in Cameron Park that needed a lot of work. I just felt like a loser. And I was like, Lord, is this what you had for my life? Just driving. I'm like, I just, you gotta let me know, because I can get behind it, but like, does it get better? Is this what you had in mind when you called me? That I would, is this it? And the Lord said, what if it was? He said, would it be enough for you if I asked you to be a wife and a mother and love 40 people who I made? Would it be enough for you? Would you serve them? And I just got checked. It was so, those moments where you're just so convicted. I'm like, oh, I've been thinking I was there for me. And I show up that way to them, and I show up that way to my husband, and I show up that way to my friends, and I am self-absorbed. But not so with you. The world only knows entitlement. The world only knows how to climb the ladder, how to get on the fast track to growth, how to break out of your current and get to something, how to attain, how to get more, how to be recognized, how to be applauded. Jesus says that. This is what the Gentiles do. He goes, you know that. Not so with you. We're called to be so different. We're called to be so other. The problem is, nobody wants to play second fiddle. I'll end with this. Leonard Bernstein was the conductor for the New York Philharmonic. When asked what the most difficult instrument in the orchestra is, Leonard Bernstein responded, second fiddle. I can get plenty of first violinists, but to find someone who can play second fiddle with enthusiasm, that's a problem. And if we have no second fiddle, we have no harmony. No one has second fiddle on their Pinterest vision board. No one takes their 8-year-old prodigy and says, all right, Timmy, mom and dad are gonna spend a lot of money on lessons, and you're gonna practice hours, and you're gonna be in recitals, and you know what we want you to do, Timmy? We know what mom and dad hope for you. Second fiddle. We all want first chair. But with no second fiddle, there's no harmony. With no serving, there's no disciples. I have to serve to be a disciple. And how do I make disciples? My life pointed at other people saying, I am here to serve you. You cannot make disciples outside of serving. You cannot be a disciple outside of serving. You guys grab communion, pass it down. This is what Jesus invites us into. And it is a richer and more beautiful life. Those years of youth ministry, you guys, we never exploded. We didn't make albums. I didn't fill stadiums. It wasn't Jesus Culture 2.0. But those years of my life that I pointed to the next generation and said, I'm here to serve you and see you go farther and see your walk with God flourish and serve the youth leaders and serve the families of this church. I see you. I see you today. There are parents in here that I know I've served you by loving your student and taking them to coffee and pointing them to Jesus. And when I wasn't doing it for me, it was better. They were the richest years of ministry that I've spent so far when I just came and said, I want to serve. I want to lay my life down for you. I want to see you go farther. Our life showing up as humble servants will change the world, and it will change us.